Millionaire disguises himself as gardener, then sees his maid protecting his daughter from stepmother, morning in the suburbs of Seattle. The sky was clear as glass, the light pouring through tall windows, washing over a perfectly arranged breakfast table. 2 cereal bowls, a half-empty glass of milk, and a silence so heavy it almost had weight. Inside the perfect house, something invisible was breaking. Ethan Walker, a celebrated architect, once believed he had finally found peace. After 3 years of loneliness following his wife's death, he met Victoria Hale, a popular lifestyle vlogger, adored for her image of discipline, family, and grace. She made him believe that love could begin again. They married after 6 months. Everyone said, "Ethan is the luckiest man alive." 8 months later, luck had turned into dread. Liam and Chloe, his 11-year-old twins, no longer ran to greet him at the door. They moved like shadows, quiet, cautious, watching every word. When Ethan asked, "How was your day, sweetheart?" Chloe's lips barely moved. "Fine, Dad." Liam forced a smile and changed the subject. At first, it was only unease, a whisper of doubt he couldn't name. But day by day, that whisper grew louder, colder, until it filled every corner of the house. One evening, coming home early, Ethan walked past Victoria's filming studio. Her sweet, camera-ready tone vanished. Behind the door, her voice was sharp as glass. "Chloe, how many times must I tell you? Tears make your father ashamed. Wash your face and smile. If you can't, forget about dinner." Then the sound of a door slamming. Ethan froze in the hallway, his heart pounding painfully against his ribs. Part of him wanted to burst in, another part whispered, "No." But it can't be coincidence either. That night he sat alone in the garage, staring out at Lake Washington. His reflection on the windshield looked like a stranger's, a father afraid of his own home. He called Mark Davis, his closest friend and lawyer. "I think Victoria is hurting the kids." Mark hesitated. "Are you sure? Maybe you're overthinking. She seems kind." Ethan's voice was low. "Mark, I've seen pain hiding behind smiles before, but Chloe's eyes, that's fear." Mark sighed. "If you really believe that, find proof. Don't confront her until you know." On his drive back, Ethan stopped at a familiar intersection. In the rearview mirror, he saw a memory. Liam and Chloe, 8 years old, chasing each other on the lawn, sunlight tangled in their hair. Now the lawn was the same, the house was the same, only the laughter was gone. To bring it back, he had to uncover the truth, no matter how cruel it might be. Late that night, his office glowed softly. On his desk, the family photo stared back at him. Victoria's flawless smile, the children beside her forcing theirs. He touched the frame and whispered, "I won't let anyone hurt them again, not even my wife." Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a warning. And in that moment, an idea took root. Reckless, dangerous, but necessary. He had to see it with his own eyes. That was the night Ethan Walker began his search for the truth, with a disguise, a daring plan, and a father's promise to protect his children at any cost. The Seattle night was heavy with mist, the lake lights flickering across the ceiling like restless memories. Ethan sat in his study, staring at the unfinished blueprints that once symbolized order and balance. Now, nothing but confusion. He had tried to convince himself that Victoria was only strict, that the children were just growing up. But the silence in Chloe's eyes and the faint bruise on Liam's wrist that morning shattered every illusion he had left. As the cold wind drifted in from Lake Washington, Ethan realized he couldn't wait any longer. He needed the truth, not guesses, not hope, but truth seen through a father's own eyes. The idea began as a flicker, then grew into a blaze. He would return to his own home, but not as himself. The next morning, he met with Mark Davis. His old friend listened quietly, his expression hardening. "You've lost your mind," Mark said finally. "Disguise yourself and sneak into your own house? Ethan, that's illegal." Ethan shook his head, eyes fixed on the gray horizon outside the cafe window. "If the law can't protect my children, then I will. I can't let them live in fear another day." Mark exhaled deeply, then said softly, "If you're going to do this, be careful. Don't let them know." That night, Ethan prepared. He bought worn work clothes from a small thrift shop, frayed jeans, a faded denim shirt, cracked boots. At a costume store, he chose a brown beard and a pair of bent metal glasses. When he tried them on, the reflection in the mirror was no longer Ethan Walker, the celebrated architect, but a weary man with hunched shoulders and calloused hands. Edward, the gardener. To keep his cover, he hired a local stage actor named Ryan Cole to make short phone calls to Victoria, pretending to be him on a business trip to Los Angeles. "Keep it short," Ethan said. "If she asks questions, tell her I'm in a meeting." When he told Victoria about the trip, she smiled gently. "A whole month? That's a long time, darling. The kids and I will miss you." But her eyes betrayed her. There was relief behind the sweetness. Ethan smiled faintly, turning away before she could see the tremor in his gaze. The following morning, a rusty pickup truck stopped in front of the house. The driver, Ethan, stepped out, cap pulled low, toolbox in hand. Grace Miller, the new housekeeper, opened the back door. She was in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a calm voice. "You must be the new gardener," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Edward." His voice was low, rough, stripped of its usual warmth. Grace smiled softly. "Welcome. Just be careful. Mrs. Hale isn't fond of mistakes." From the garden, Ethan looked through the kitchen window. Victoria stood there, giving orders, her tone sharp as glass. When she noticed him, she frowned. "Who are you?" "The new gardener, ma'am." Her eyes swept over him, from his worn boots to his rough shirt, dripping disdain. "I hope you know what you're doing. I can't stand incompetence." "Yes, ma'am." Ethan kept his head down, hiding the fury burning behind his calm. That afternoon, Liam and Chloe came home from school. They paused at the sight of a stranger pruning the roses. Grace smiled. "This is Mr. Edward, the new gardener." The twins nodded politely. "Good afternoon, sir." 3 simple words, yet each one cut through Ethan's heart like a blade. He nodded faintly, forcing his breath steady, even as his chest tightened with grief. For the first time, he stood before his own children, and they didn't know him. As they disappeared inside, Ethan looked up at the house bathed in the fading gold of sunset. Once a home, now a stage of unspoken secrets, and he, the father behind a borrowed face, had just stepped into the most dangerous role of his life. That evening, as the last streak of sunlight melted through the maple trees, Ethan stood motionless beside the flower bed, pruning shears forgotten in his hands. The house behind him was silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that hums with tension. One sharp sound from inside made him look up, heart pounding. From that moment, his double life truly began. The first morning, as Edward moved like a slow, unbearable dream, Ethan rose at 5, brewed bitter coffee in the shed, and listened to the echo of Victoria's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She always woke early to supervise breakfast, not to cook, but to command. As Grace set the table, Victoria inspected each plate as if reviewing soldiers. "Don't let the pancakes get cold," she said evenly. "I despise cold food." From the garden, Ethan could see through the kitchen window. Liam and Chloe sat opposite each other, hands folded, eyes lowered, as if they were afraid to breathe. "Lower your heads," Victoria ordered. "Good children don't look at adults without permission." She lifted her coffee cup, smiling faintly. And during meals, no talking. Silence swallowed the room. Only the faint clink of spoons broke the air. Chloe's hand trembled, spilling a few drops of milk. Victoria slammed her cup down, the porcelain cracking slightly. "What is wrong with you? You're 11 and still eat like a toddler?" "I'm sorry, Mom," Chloe whispered. "Don't apologize. Learn not to make mistakes." Ethan's knuckles turned white around the shears. Every instinct in him screamed to intervene, but he forced himself still. He needed proof. He had hidden a miniature camera inside the handle of his spade, its scratched metal disguising the lens pointed straight at the kitchen. By noon, sunlight slanted through the patio. From above came the sound of muffled crying. Victoria was teaching her daughter proper grooming. Through the window, Ethan saw Chloe sitting in front of a mirror, her hair yanked back so tightly that her skin glistened. "It hurts, Mom." "Beauty hurts. A lady must never look untidy like that neighbor girl." "I just want to wear it low." "Quiet. Stop arguing." The harsh scrape of a brush through tangled hair made Ethan flinch. His hands trembled so violently the fake beard nearly slipped off. Later that afternoon, Liam was summoned to the living room. "Your math homework," Victoria said coldly. "You got this wrong." She waved the notebook, then tossed it on the table. 12 minus 7 equals 8? Are you stupid?" "I'm sorry, I'll fix it." "No need. You'll stay in your room until you learn basic arithmetic." "But what about dinner?" "No dinner. Stupid children don't deserve good food." Liam lowered his head, walking upstairs. Each step echoed in Ethan's chest like a hammer. He watched that small figure disappear down the hall and felt something inside him tear. That night, long after the house went still, Ethan slipped into the shed and retrieved the spade. He connected the camera to his tablet, and the screen filled with silent cruelty. Victoria tapping her nails on the table, Chloe trembling, Liam staring at the floor. No shouting, no violence, just clean, deliberate humiliation delivered with elegance. When the video ended, Ethan didn't move. His breath came out slow, ragged, almost breaking. A tear slid down his cheek, landing on the keyboard, spreading like ink. He wasn't the brilliant architect or the betrayed husband anymore. He was simply a father watching hell unfold in his own home. "My God," he whispered hoarsely. This was worse than I ever imagined. Outside, the Seattle night held its breath. The faint waves of the lake sounded like a heavy heartbeat, the steady, painful rhythm of a father preparing for a war he could no longer avoid. When the screen went dark, the small room around Ethan remained wrapped in silence. The faint green glow from his tablet faded, leaving his face pale and hollow. Through the window, he saw the kitchen light still on, and a silhouette moving quietly inside. Grace Miller. She worked in silence, her motions calm and gentle. All day, Ethan had noticed she was the only one who dared to rest a comforting hand on Chloe's shoulder when the girl trembled. Every time Victoria's voice rose, Grace appeared between them like a fragile shield. He wondered, how could someone with no power, no title, carry such quiet strength? The next morning, while Ethan trimmed the lawn, Victoria's voice cut through the air. "How many times have I told you, Grace? The tablecloth must be ironed on both sides, not one. Is this your idea of standards?" Grace lowered her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll fix it." "Fix it? I'm tired of your apologies. If you can't maintain discipline, I'll find someone who can." "Yes, ma'am." Her tone was calm, almost gentle. But when Victoria turned away, Ethan saw her fist tighten, her lips tremble. At noon, he caught her sneaking leftover bread to the children in the kitchen. "Here, eat quickly. Don't let your mother see," she whispered. Liam hesitated. "What if she finds out?" "Then she'll punish me instead," Grace said simply. Ethan watched from the garden doorway, heart twisting. She didn't know anyone was watching. She just did what was right. That afternoon, Victoria hosted her friends. She boasted about her perfect home and her disciplined children. When one friend complimented Chloe's charm, Victoria smirked. "She's adorable only when she's quiet. Otherwise, she's unbearable." The room burst into laughter. Chloe's cheeks flushed red as she lowered her head. Ethan gripped his spade so hard the metal shook. He saw Grace gently place a hand on Chloe's shoulder, a small, defiant act of kindness. Their eyes met for a moment, and the girl managed a fragile smile. Later that evening, Victoria noticed a wrinkle on the tablecloth. The rage was instant. She threw her wineglass to the floor, crimson liquid splattering like blood. "What do you even do all day, Grace?" "I'll fix it right away, ma'am." "Useless! I told you to set an example, not teach my children laziness." "Ma'am, I only—" The slap came fast, sharp, echoing across the dining room. Grace stumbled, one hand clutching the broken glass, her cheek burning red. The room froze. Liam shot up from his chair. "Mom, don't hit her!" Victoria spun around, eyes blazing. "Sit down! You don't speak to me that way!" Chloe burst into tears, running to Grace. "Are you okay?" Grace pulled her close, whispering, "It's all right, sweetheart." Outside, Ethan stood behind the window, shaking. Every muscle screamed for him to break in, to stop it. But then Grace looked toward him, just a fleeting glance, enough for him to see the silent plea in her eyes. "Don't. Not yet." Victoria stormed upstairs, leaving behind a heavy, aching quiet. Grace sat down, wiped the blood from her lip, and continued picking up shards of glass. Liam and Chloe knelt beside her, helping in silence. The sight of them, 3 souls on their knees, piecing together a shattered world, made Ethan's chest ache so fiercely he could barely breathe. That night, sleep refused to come. In the cold shed, he replayed the footage. The image froze on Grace's face, her cheek flushed, her lips curved in a small, steady smile meant to calm the frightened children. Ethan covered his face with both hands, shaking. She was the only one in that house who wore no mask, proof that kindness could survive even in cruelty. And in that moment, Ethan knew he was no longer alone. Outside, the Seattle wind howled, rattling the windows. In its whisper, he heard the echo of his own heart. "Tomorrow, I won't just stand by and watch." The next morning, Seattle was shrouded in mist, cold enough to cling to the skin. Ethan rose before dawn. He hadn't slept. His mind kept replaying the image of Victoria slapping Grace and walking away as if she'd brushed off dust from her hands. The sound of Chloe's muffled sobs and Liam's frightened eyes haunted him. As Victoria prepared to leave, Ethan pretended to trim the hedges near the front walk. Her voice floated through the crisp air, smooth, polite, and chilling. "I just wanted to ask about custody laws," she told someone on the phone. "In case my husband becomes unfit to care for the children. If he's too focused on work, I could file for full custody, correct?" Ethan froze, the spade tight in his hands. He barely remembered to breathe. When Victoria ended the call, she smiled that flawless smile the world adored, then disappeared inside. Under the gray light, Ethan finally understood. She didn't just want to hurt the children. She wanted to take everything, his family, his fortune, his life. That night, Ethan began documenting everything. He photographed the bruises on Liam's wrist after the boy was forced to carry heavy buckets. He recorded Chloe's trembling apologies during dinner. He even captured the phone call Victoria had made to her lawyer, evidence no one could deny. Later, in the dim light of the tool shed, he reviewed the footage. Victoria's cold smile, Liam shrinking back, Chloe blinking away tears, Grace stepping in silently to clean the spilled milk. No music, no screaming, just the suffocating cruelty of control. The next day, Victoria was gone for the morning. Inside, Grace sat with the children in the kitchen. From the garden, Ethan listened. "Miss Grace," Chloe asked softly, "why is Mom always angry? Did I do something wrong?" Grace rested a hand on her shoulder. "No, sweetheart. Grown-ups sometimes forget that children have hearts too." After a pause, she added quietly, "When I was little, my father left. My mother worked all the time. I used to think it was my fault, that I wasn't enough. I grew up afraid of being forgotten, afraid of never being loved. But I learned something." She looked at them, her voice firm. "No child should grow up in fear." Liam nodded, repeating the words softly. "No child should grow up in fear." "That's right," Grace smiled. "And I won't let that happen to you." From outside, Ethan blinked hard, his chest tightening. He wanted to step in, to tell her he understood, that he'd lived with that same fear. But he couldn't. Edward couldn't. At lunch, Victoria's temper flared again. "I told you to wash the new tablecloth," she snapped. "I did, ma'am. You just what? You never finish anything. Maybe you don't deserve to eat if you can't do your job." She threw her fork down, the sound sharp as glass. Grace's hand trembled slightly, but she stayed composed. Ethan, watching through the window, clenched his fists until his knuckles went white. He had to wait. The right moment would come. That evening, Victoria took another call. "If I can convince him to sign the contract," she murmured, "the assets transfer to my name, right? And if something happens, custody defaults to me?" She laughed softly. "Perfect. I'll make him think it's his idea." Ethan stepped back from the door, pulse hammering. She wasn't just cruel, she was calculating his downfall. Later that night, he opened his laptop again. The footage froze on Grace brushing Chloe's hair, smiling tenderly. She didn't know she was being filmed, and that made it real, pure, unguarded kindness. He reached out, fingertips brushing the screen as if he could feel the warmth of that smile. What he felt wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, quiet and terrifying in its honesty. He was falling in love with the woman who had the courage to protect his children when he couldn't. Outside, rain began again, tapping against the glass. Ethan looked out at the dark lake, Grace's voice echoing. "No child should grow up in fear." He whispered, "And no father should stand by while his children live in it." His eyes hardened, for the first time, not just with anger, but with purpose. This time, he wouldn't only watch, he would act. That afternoon, golden light filtered through the wide windows of the Walker residence, glinting off silverware and crystal glasses. Victoria was hosting a luncheon for her wealthy friends. The table gleamed, white linen, flickering candles, everything immaculate. Too perfect. From the garden, Ethan, still Edward, watched through the glass. Victoria sat at the head of the table, smiling her polished smile. Liam and Chloe sat beside her, dressed neatly, like decorative props. She spoke of family, discipline, and achievement, her voice measured and cold. "My children are taught that mistakes are shameful," Victoria said, eyes fixed on her wine glass. "When they make one, they face the consequences. No exceptions." Laughter rippled through the room. One woman leaned toward Chloe. "They're so well behaved, nothing like mine." Victoria's lips curved. "They've learned when to be silent." Chloe squeezed Liam's hand under the table. Her small fingers trembled. Then fate, cruel and small, intervened. Her elbow brushed the glass before her. It tipped, spilling water across the tablecloth. The sound of glass against porcelain rang sharp as a blade. The laughter died. Victoria's smile vanished. She set her glass down slowly. Too slowly. "Chloe," she said, voice calm, dangerous, "what did you just do?" I'm sorry, Mom. It was an accident." "An accident?" She rose. "You embarrassed me in front of my guests. Do you know what they'll say? That I can't even control my own child." Her hand lifted. The movement flashed like steel, but before it struck, Grace stepped forward. The chair clattered, the air cracked, and she pulled Chloe into her arms just as the slap landed. The sound echoed, clean and brutal. Silence fell, thick and absolute. Every guest froze. No one breathed. Grace stood motionless, her cheek blazing red. Chloe clung to her waist, trembling. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Grace said, voice shaking, "but she doesn't deserve to be hit." For a moment Victoria stared, stunned, not by guilt, but by the realization that she was being watched. Her guests' faces were pale, confused, horrified. Her expression hardened. You dare defy me in front of my friends?" Outside, Ethan felt something inside him break. The pruning shears dropped from his hand, clattering against the stone. He moved, slowly at first, then faster, each step heavier than breath. Through the glass he saw Victoria step closer to Grace. "You're fired!" she spat. "Get out of my house!" "Yes, ma'am," Grace said softly, but didn't move. "But before I leave, I'll say this. The children need love, not fear." Ethan heard nothing after that. His pulse roared in his ears. He pushed the sliding door open. The metal groaned, slicing through the silence. Every head turned toward him. The gardener, dirt-streaked, his false beard hiding the man beneath. He didn't care anymore. He saw Grace's flushed face, the children trembling, and Victoria, the woman who had turned his home into hell. One step, then another. His chest heaved, his hands clenched. One more breath, and he would speak, tear the mask away, reveal himself as Ethan Walker, the husband, the father, the witness. The air in the dining room seemed to vanish. Every pair of eyes turned toward Ethan, the dirt-streaked gardener, walking forward. Each step echoed sharply through the house that had once been his, the house that had once meant family. Victoria froze, her breath quickening, her confusion turning to fear. "What are you doing here? Who let you in?" she stammered, trying to hold her composure. Ethan stopped in the center of the room. Rain began to patter against the glass, heavy and rhythmic. Slowly, he reached up and removed his glasses. Silence spread like a wave. Then he peeled off the brown beard. The mask fell away, and Ethan Walker stood there, unhidden. A guest gasped. "My God, it's him!" Victoria staggered back, her hand trembling. No, it can't be." "Yes," Ethan said quietly. "It's me." "You disguised yourself? You spied on me?" "No," he said. "I protected my children." He took a step closer, voice steady, cutting through the stillness. "You starved them. You locked Liam in his room. You yanked Chloe's hair until she cried. You slapped Grace. You humiliated them all, and you thought no one saw?" He opened his toolbox, pulling out the tablet. With a single tap, the footage played. Victoria's voice filled the room, her shouts, the children's sobs, Grace's trembling defense. Each sound struck like a hammer. "You recorded me?" she choked out. "No," he said firmly. "I recorded the truth, because it's the only thing you can't control." Around them, her guests sat frozen. One man rose quietly, his expression heavy with disgust. Victoria's painted face crumpled. The power, the pride, the facade, gone. "This marriage," Ethan continued, voice low and resonant, "ends now. I'll take full custody of the children, and you'll answer for what you've done." He set the tablet on the table. "I'm not the man you can manipulate anymore." Victoria sank into her chair, tears streaking down her flawless mask. The guests began to leave, their silence sharper than judgment. Ethan turned toward Grace. She was still standing, pale, eyes wide. "Edward," she whispered. "You're Ethan? You lied to me? All this time?" Ethan's chest tightened. The look in her eyes hurt more than any wound. "Grace," he said softly, "I had to. I didn't have a choice. I needed to know the truth, to save them." She looked down, tears falling quietly. He stepped closer, voice trembling. "I had to protect my children," he said, each word careful, heavy with meaning. "And now, I want to protect you too." Grace lifted her gaze, anger, grief, and tenderness all flickering in her eyes. Outside, the rain grew heavier, hammering against the glass like the heartbeat of a house breaking apart. In that cold, fragile light, every lie had been stripped away, leaving only 3 people standing amid the wreckage: a father, a fallen mother, and the woman brave enough to love in the dark. The next morning, the house was quiet, but not the suffocating kind. It was the silence that follows a storm. A car pulled up outside. Mark Davis stepped out, flanked by 2 officers and a woman in a gray suit. Ethan opened the door, his face pale, his eyes steady. Victoria stood halfway down the staircase, silk robe slipping from her shoulder, her eyes vacant. When the officer read the restraining order, she barely moved. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "No," Ethan said softly. "You did this to yourself." Mark rested a hand on his friend's shoulder, silent affirmation in his gaze. The lawyer unfolded documents, evidence, recordings, statements from Grace. There was nothing left to deny. When the police escorted Victoria out, Liam held Chloe's hand tightly. Neither spoke. As the car disappeared down the street, the air seemed lighter. The house, once heavy with fear, filled with sunlight again. Ethan knelt before his children, gathering them in his arms, tears falling freely. "I should have protected you sooner," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I let it go on too long." Chloe buried her face in his shoulder. "You're here now," she said softly. Liam nodded, eyes no longer afraid, but steady, alive. A week later, they began therapy. The small office smelled of crayons and warm tea. The therapist taught them to name what they felt instead of hiding it. At first, their words were clumsy. Then, slowly, Chloe began to talk about school. Liam laughed at something silly, and for the first time in months, Ethan found himself laughing too, not out of habit, but from somewhere deep, somewhere healing. Grace stayed for a few days, helping around the house, quiet and gentle as always. But one morning she came to him with calm eyes and a folded note in her hand. "I have to go," she said, "not because I don't care, but because I need time to think." Ethan looked at her, sadness soft in his gaze. "I understand," he said. "We all need time to find ourselves again." She smiled faintly. "You and the kids will be fine. I know you will." "Thank you, Grace," he said, "for helping us and for reminding me how to trust again." They stood in silence for a moment. The wind carried the scent of rain from the lake. When she turned to leave, Ethan didn't stop her. Some people aren't meant to stay forever. They arrive to save you, then quietly walk away. That evening, the sun dipped low over the water. Ethan sat on the porch with the twins, watching them draw with chalk on the steps, their laughter echoing through the house. The walls were the same, the cracks still there, but the air was full of life again. He looked out at the golden light on the lake and thought of Grace's words. No child should grow up in fear. He smiled softly. "And love," he whispered, "real love takes time. And honesty." Behind him, Chloe called, "Dad, look!" He turned. The children were holding hands, grinning at him. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt peace. No disguises, no secrets, just a father, his children, and a home learning how to smile again. A month passed. Seattle had changed seasons, clearer skies, softer rain, tender buds unfurling on the maple trees. Ethan's house had changed too. Mornings brought laughter, afternoons smelled of baking bread, and in the evenings the kitchen lights glowed warm again. The cracks in their lives were still there, but love began to fill them, quiet and patient. One afternoon, as Ethan wrestled with a stubborn pot of pasta, the back door creaked open. Grace stood there, smiling, carrying the soft breath of spring with her. She was no longer the housekeeper, but a woman simply visiting, wearing a plain dress, her hair loose in the light. "I knocked 3 times, she teased. "Then I saw smoke coming from the window and figured you were trying to cook again." He turned, embarrassed by the mess, sauce splattered, noodles stuck, a pan slightly burnt. Chloe and Liam giggled. "Save him, Miss Grace," Chloe cried. Grace laughed, rolling up her sleeves. "All right, let's see what disaster we have here." They cooked together, side by side, cleaning, tasting, laughing. For the first time, the house was filled with easy laughter, real laughter, not the careful, nervous kind. Ethan looked around at the 3 people he loved most in the world and realized this was what home sounded like. After dinner, the children worked on homework, while he and Grace sat in the garden, the same garden where everything had begun. The sun was sinking, painting gold over the roses. A soft breeze carried the scent of spring and the faint echo of the children's laughter. "You look different," Grace said quietly. "How so?" "Lighter. You used to look like you were carrying the whole world on your shoulders." Ethan smiled gently. "Maybe because I don't have to pretend anymore." He paused, eyes meeting hers. "No disguises this time. Just me, the man you helped become whole again." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You don't have to thank me." "I'm not," he said softly. "I'm asking you to marry me." She froze. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. Inside lay a modest silver ring that caught the last ray of sunlight. "I can't promise perfect," he said, "but I can promise honesty. With you, with my kids, with myself." Grace laughed through her tears. "You're terrible at surprises, Ethan Walker." "I know," he said, taking her hand, "but I won't let the people I love live in fear ever again." When she nodded, the air itself seemed to still. The wind rustled the leaves like applause. From inside, the twins ran out, shouting their names. "Dad! Miss Grace!" They spun through the garden, laughter scattering into the golden light. Grace sat down on the bench, opening her book. The sunset brushed her hair with gold. Ethan stood nearby, hands in his pockets, eyes soft and full. He breathed in the scent of roses, the sound of his children's laughter, and the steady calm of peace. Before him stretched the truest thing he'd ever built, not a house, but a home, not walls, but love. Sometimes you have to lose everything, including your identity, to rediscover what truly matters. Ethan smiled as the light faded. This time there was no disguise, only truth, love, and the quiet beauty of beginning again.